If there's anything I've learned over the years, it's that life very rarely asks, do you have what it takes? Way more often than not, especially when it comes to following your dreams and living out your passion or anything that has to do with creativity or creative work, the question it asks is, are you willing to pay the price? But what does that look like exactly, and what are some ways that you can make that price easier to pay? Let's talk about it. Several years ago, I was living in Honduras and working at an orphanage, and one of the guys I worked with was from Tennessee, and he was a huge Atlanta Braves fan. And so we started teaching the kids there how to play baseball, and we went around and found a bunch of junk and made this makeshift baseball field, and you had all the bases and you had the wall you could hit home runs over, and we had a great time just teaching these kids all the ins and outs of baseball.
This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again.
And to make things a little bit less dangerous, we used a plastic bat and wiffle balls. And we had plenty of wiffle balls, but we only had one bat. And after a while, it broke. And so we tried to find a replacement. We went to the malls and stores all around Honduras, the big city, the little towns, but we could not find another plastic bat. And I don't know why there was a bat shortage in 2014 in Honduras, but we lived through it. And so we just couldn't play for a while.
You're killing me, Smalls!
But then a few weeks later, I went back to the United States for a few weeks. And so, of course, I made it a priority to find a wiffle ball set, find a really nice, durable bat that I could bring back with me in my suitcase. And I went to Walmart and I found it. I found the perfect bat. It was the perfect length, the perfect weight. It just looked awesome. I knew these kids were going to love it, and I knew they were going to be so excited to be able to play baseball again. But it wouldn't fit in my suitcase, and I did everything I could to try to make it work, but it was just too long. It just wasn't going to fit, and so I just stuck it in my backpack, just kind of sticking up out of the top, and I thought, hey, this shouldn't be a problem. And I even went on Delta's website and made sure that you could carry sports equipment in your carry-on. You could just put it in the plane above your seat, and everything looked good to go, following their rules and guidelines. And so I get to the airport and I check in and everything's going well. I give them my bags to go underneath the plane, and I go and get into the line for security and wait my turn to take my shoes off and go through the detectors and all that good stuff. And then there's a security guard that's up ahead, and I see him and I notice him because he's like one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen in real life. And he's just kind of walking back and forth, looking around, doing his job. And then he notices me and he says, "Excuse me, sir. I know you are not trying to bring a baseball bat onto the airplane." And it catches me off guard a little bit at first, but then I look at him and go, no, man, it's cool. I looked on the website, Delta's guidelines, the rules, they say this is totally fine. There shouldn't be a problem. But then he takes a few steps closer and becomes even larger, and he says, "Excuse me, sir. I know you are not trying to take a baseball bat onto the airplane." And so at this point, I'm like, okay, maybe I can play the orphan card. And I'm like, hey man, it's cool. It's just a plastic bat. I work at an orphanage in Honduras. It's for the kids, just so they can play baseball. Like, no big deal. It's not like a weapon or anything. It's not even a real bat. It's just plastic. And he says, "I'm sorry, sir. I do not care what it is. You cannot take it on the airplane." And at this point, I'm kind of frustrated. I'm a little bit annoyed because I know what the rules are according to Delta. And now I'm in line. I'm at the point of like getting onto the plane, and this guy's just not going to let it happen. And I'm just thinking about these kids, about how disappointed they're going to be and how disappointed I'm going to be. It's just such a frustrating thing. And so I lost my cool just a little bit, and I said, "Hey man, here's the deal. If I take over an airplane with a plastic bat, I think I deserve the plane. I mean, if I'm dangerous with a plastic wiffle ball bat, I'm probably pretty dangerous without it." You know what I mean? And he was not a fan of that at all. And so he took a few more steps closer, and he's like, "I do not care." And he got right in my face. He's like, "You're not taking this bat on the plane, so get out of line, go figure it out." And so I did. I got out of the security line, and I just started kind of walking around, pacing back and forth, trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? And I went back to the desk to where I checked in. And I talked to the lady there. I was like, "Hey, here's my situation. Can I check this plastic bat in? Can you just put it underneath the plane? Is that an option?" And she laughed at me and said, "No, it would have to be in a bag or a suitcase. Like, you can't just put a sticker on it and throw it underneath the plane. It doesn't work that way. So it would have to be inside of some kind of container." And then I looked across at like the airport mart, kind of that stereotypical place where they sell books and magazines and candy, and everything is 47 times the MSRP. And I thought, I wonder if they have something. And so I walked over and I'm looking around, hoping to find some kind of bag, suitcase, just anything that would hold this half-pound bat. And I talked to the guy at the desk, at the counter. I said, "Hey, here's my situation. Any ideas?" And he thought about it for a moment, and he said, "Well, can we just put it in a box, like a cardboard box? And I thought, sure, I don't see why not. That's some sort of a container. And so we went over to the coffee station and where they have like fountain drinks and things like that. He opened up the cabinet, pulls out a long, narrow, rectangular box that had a bunch of cups in it. He pulls the big sleeve of cups out, throws the cups back in the cabinet, and hands me the box. I was like, will this work? And it was basically the perfect size to fit that bat down into, and then we just taped it up. I went back over to the check-in counter. The lady ran it through the system, put the sticker on it, put it underneath the plane. And then a few hours later, I'm in Honduras. I get it out of the baggage claim, and eventually a few hours after that, I take it to the orphanage, give it to the kids, and they're able to play baseball that night. And they had a great time, and it was just such a wonderful experience. And it was so many obstacles that I seemed to have to overcome to get there. I was thinking about this story the other day and how it's just such an interesting metaphor for creativity and chasing your dreams and doing different things that are special, because you're always going to run into obstacles. There's always going to be things in the way that you have to overcome, and it's kind of understandable why so many people walk away, why they quit. I mean, it makes sense when things get hard and they get costly, whether it's monetarily or just time or effort or energy or whatever it is. It's hard. And so what does it look like to keep going, to be willing to pay the price, that no matter what happens, no matter which obstacles show up, that you find a way to get around them and actually chase after the things that matter? And in my mind, there are three main things to think about when it comes to paying the cost. The first one is sacrifice, the second is friction, and the third is small acts of greatness. Let's break each one down. When it comes to sacrifice, one of the best things I ever learned was that in life, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. No matter what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, you're gonna have to trade something somewhere else. And then the question becomes, is what you're giving up less valuable than what you're gaining? Like, you have to figure out that math equation of, okay, I'm going to go do this over here. It's going to cost this much time and effort and energy, and I'm going to have to learn all of these things. But on this other side of my life, I'm going to have to give up all of these things. So maybe I spend more time doing this thing that I'm passionate about, but that leaves less time to play video games, less time to watch Netflix, less time to hang out with my friends, less time to sleep. Like, it's good and bad. There's all sorts of different things you have to consider in the trade-off. And typically, the more special, the more valuable the thing is that you're chasing, the more you're going to have to give up on the other side, the bigger that trade-off is going to be. A lot of times when you're chasing something special, especially in the world of creativity, it's not going to necessarily make much money, or if any money. And so the question is, are you willing to sacrifice different things? Are you willing to eat at restaurants less often? Are you willing to move to a cheaper area so that your rent is lower, your bills overall are lower? You know, I lived in Honduras for several years, and cost of living down there is much cheaper. I worked for a school that provided free housing, so I didn't have to worry about rent, and that allowed me to do other things creatively that I normally would not have had time or energy to be able to do, but because of my living situation, I could do that. Now, am I saying that you need to go to your spouse and be like, hey, honey, we're moving to a third world country? No, not necessarily, but would you be able to move to a smaller town, move to a smaller place that has a lower rent, a lower mortgage, something like that? Are you willing to make that trade-off in order to have the money and the flexibility to chase something else that matters? Are you willing to sacrifice your current place of comfort? You know, maybe you've gotten to a place where things are kind of going well, not quite where you wish they were, and you have ideas about where they could be, but you know, it's fine, it's good enough. Are you willing to sacrifice that in order to become a beginner, in order to kind of start over and start from zero? That way you can build up to something that actually has a much higher ceiling than the place you are now. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to give up some good things here in the present in order to make the future even better? The second thing is friction, and using friction to your advantage. And what that means is anything that you really want to do that matters, that's valuable to you, how do you remove as much friction as possible from those activities, while the things that aren't as valuable, the things that you don't want to do, the bad habits or whatever, how do you add more friction to those things? For example, with YouTube, I want to make making these videos as easy and frictionless as possible. And so I created this area in my office that never changes. No one touches this spot here. You know, it's off limits to my kids and my cat. And I can just sit down, hit record, and then I'm doing it. And it's just easier that way. I'm not having to pull lights out of the closet. I'm not having to move stuff around. You know, it's very easy just to sit down and go. And that means I'm much more likely to get it done. If you're a writer or designer, what does it look like to create a space where you can just sit down and get started? There's not a bunch of distractions. There's not a lot of clutter, a lot of things happening that you got to move this and do that over there and pull this out and put that away, that you can just sit down and go. remove friction. But then on other activities like scrolling through Instagram, looking at stuff you don't even really care about, or things that you just honestly dislike, but yet you're there scrolling over and over and over again, or watching Netflix, or any of the bad habits, especially that have come out of our kind of modern technology society of social media and all the things pulling our attention, pulling our time. How do you increase the friction for those things? For example, I found that I would scroll on Facebook for hours and not even think about it, not even realize it. I would just sit there in bed or sit on the couch and just scroll over and over again, looking at stuff that I don't even know these people, really. I might have gone to high school with them forever ago. It might be some random acquaintance that I met at some event one time. Like, I don't really care what they had for lunch, but yet here I am scrolling through all these posts, and it's like, well, this is useless. How do I increase the friction? I just deleted the apps off my phone. Like, I don't have any social media on my phone.
No Facebook and no Skype and no Angry Birds.
So if I want to go to Facebook or Twitter or anything, and mainly for my business, I have to go to my computer. I have to open it up, go to the web page, scroll through. But there's a lot more friction there. So now I don't spend nearly as much time on it as I used to. So if you have a bad habit, or you find yourself doing things that you really wish you weren't doing, what can you do to add friction, to add time, to add cost to those things? Because our brains typically default to the lowest common denominator of whatever's easiest in the moment. And so if you make it harder, you're much more likely to not do those things. And then the third concept is small acts of greatness. We talk about small acts of kindness all the time, where you do these little things that end up making a big difference. But I think it works just as well when we're talking about what we're doing as far as like being great or trying to accomplish something that matters. But unfortunately, we often look down on little things because we're constantly bombarded, because of social media, because of our brain's tendency to compare ourselves. We're always looking at these big things that other people are accomplishing, and then we look at our own lives, our own activities and time, and we think, I'm just doing all these little things. What does it even matter? I mean, when you're thinking about, okay, I just want to write 100 words, like that seems kind of insignificant when you see somebody online who just finished a 500-page novel. I mean, exercising for 10 minutes doesn't seem like much when you see all these fitness gurus and people posting on Instagram that, they just got done with their 3-hour workout and they work out 8 days a week and all that kind of thing. It's like, oh wow, 10 minutes is kind of insignificant. But the truth is, winning the next 10 minutes is its own form of greatness. These small acts of greatness, writing 100 words daily, writing 100 words consistently over a long period of time, turns into something special. But people are so busy wishing they had more time and resources that they fail to make use of the time and resources that they have. In the wise words of Seneca, it's not that we have a short time to live, it's that we waste a lot of it. But something that's helped me is to think about life like a time traveler. You know how in time travel stories and movies, when the people go back in time, they're worried that they're going to radically change the present by doing something small. You're going to step on a bug and then change the outcome of World War II. But few people think about how they can radically change the future by doing something small here in the present. So instead of pursuing small acts of greatness, most people pursue large acts of mediocrity. And then they wonder why life isn't what they wish it would be, or why they can't follow their dreams the way they want to, or why they can't seem to accomplish the things that they know are valuable. They run into obstacles and they give up. They find a little bit of resistance and then they walk away. This is why most podcasts don't make it past 8 episodes. It's why most writers never finish their novel. It's why so many people, especially in creative spaces, never actually see their work come to fruition.
We've been going about this all wrong.
It's like that old joke. I met a man at a party and he said, I'm writing a novel. And I said, oh really? Neither am I. Most people aren't willing to pay the price, but it doesn't have to be you. You can find ways to make the sacrifices that you need to make friction work to your advantage, and do small acts of greatness daily. And then in those moments when the big burly security guard of life comes around and says, hey, you can't come through here like that, you'll find a way to make it work. And I can't wait to see what you create. And if you're struggling with things like procrastination and anything else that's really just kind of holding you back, make sure you check out this video. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.